Welcome back, physics aficionados, to the Gamer Muscle YouTube channel. In this video, we're taking a break from virtual reality and driving simulators to check out the Drone Racing League High Voltage. Possibly one of the most convoluted game titles to exist, but it's actually a pretty awesome drone racing game slash simulator. And of the drone simulators and games that I've played recently, the nice thing with the Drone Racing League High Voltage is that it's set up more similar to a game in that you can load it up with a Xbox 360 controller, jump in and play with actual game modes, objectives, and it's just very accessible. One of the big problems with drone games that I've tried previously is that they either required a radio, a sort of proper remote control radio, or they required a ton of fiddling, or they didn't actually have any gameplay, or they just looked terrible and had terrible physics. It seems that none of them had actually got the whole package there where you could load it up and actually have some fun whilst doing something that's reasonably, or on the face of it to me, seems to have reasonably realistic physics. Now, as you can see in the video, it's got a nice little tutorial mode for those people that have never flown a drone in their life, and it's actually quite nicely done. It's a little bit slow, and you have this little dude in the corner that's dancing away, telling you how to turn left and right. And it's a little bit laboursome, but I think it's good to have that there to get you introduced to things. That said, for myself, after doing this for about 4 minutes, I wanted to put the toaster in the bathtub with myself. So I closed this off and we went straight to the free roam mode to see what it was actually like to fly. But before we loaded that out, we had to go and change some settings. When you first go from the tutorial setting, it's on beginner mode in terms of the difficulty. You can have beginner, intermediate, or pro. Each of them has different sort of stability control settings, tilt reduction, gyroscopic stabilization, all those lovely things that are actually found on real-world drones. But personally, I just wanted to go balls to the felt, maximum difficulty, full-on control, and see what it was like. So this is actually our first time flying in the game, and it is rather snappy and rather nimble. I've never flown a quadcopter in real life, so it's a little bit of a shock. As I say, I've had a little bit of experience with RC helicopter games like Phoenix and Aerofly RC, but that's always from a sort of 2D viewpoint. I've never really played them where you're looking from the first person view, FPV flying I believe it's called. And what is really nice though, and what I noticed immediately, the physics made sense and it just clicked. And that to me is the sign of a good physics game, because reality is reality, and though different vehicles in reality might be completely mental and very different from one another, underlying physics are underlying physics, and you can generally tell when you first load something up if you're going to be happy with it or if you're going to want to be smashing your face into a brick wall. The only really frustrating thing I've found with this though is that by default the Xbox controller has a ginormous dead zone which you'll want to remove, and once we did remove it and reset it, it felt even better, because strangely having a claggy spot of death on your controller gets in the way when you're trying to pilot a vehicle that can go 0 to 60 in any direction in a fraction of a second. But I started to get the hang of it. It started to make more sense. The brain was dialing into the quadcopter mentality, and it's got some really interesting dynamics. Obviously, you've got the actual mass of the quadcopter that moves and that you have to fight against with the thrust potential of the actual controls, but then also how you use the tilt and the yaw, and how you combine that together to actually make corners or decide if you're going to flip rotate, or how you're going to actually move the dynamics of the quadcopter, I think is really interesting. It's really nicely done in this simulator, and there's a huge amount of depth there, and I think it's got, you know, it captures what I believe is probably the addictive element when it comes to the core fundamentals of the mechanics. Now, I'm sure there probably are more realistic simulators out there. There is a little bit of a floaty aspect to this, but you know, when you look at real quadcopters, this is from my understanding, I've never flown one, so this could be wrong, but from what I understand, you can set them up with the gyros and a bunch of other features where you actually end up with a sort of dampened flight feel to them anyway, so I wouldn't be surprised if this is fairly representative of one or a way to set up one specific type of quadcopter. But regardless of all that nonsense, it's really bloody fun, and the flight mechanics are way more interesting than what you tend to find in other games that have flying in them. For example, the recent Battlefield games, and for some reason AAA titles that butcher helicopter and drones. I don't know why. But after flying around like a drunk lunatic, I thought we better go to the race mode and check that out. And, well, this is where the difficulty ramps up. Just free flying and doing la-di-da stuff is a lot easier, it turns out, than actually trying to navigate your drone through gates at speed and reliably. Though, after a little bit of practice, we started to get the hang of it, and it was just really good fun. You've got the little timer on the top right of the screen, and it tracks your time, it tracks other people's time. There's global scoreboards, so you can see where you're improving relative to other people. I think it's got about 5 different racetrack stages, and it's got different racetrack stages of different difficulties. So you've got some where the gates are really close together, or it's a really small environment, and some like this one. This is a medium difficulty stage where it's actually quite forgiving and there's lots of space. I have to say the small hard tracks are absolutely excruciatingly difficult. Maybe if you're actually good at drone racing, you've had practice at it. This is sort of within our first 25 minutes or so. Maybe when you've had practice at it, the smaller stuff makes more sense and is easier. Maybe I think you might start benefiting from a proper radio controller. But that said, again, it's probably just a case of practice. This, though, the medium setting was perfectly fine to jump into, and it was just, again, just really satisfied trying to get this little drone through the environment as quickly as possible, working with the gravity and the thrust of the motors, trying to cut away at your time. Proved to be really addictive. It's one of those games where you load it up and you'll find it hard to put it down. You'll be like, oh, I'll just have one more go. I can improve myself. Just one more go. Yeah, absolutely fantastic. Totally free to play. The Drone Racing League High Voltage, available on Steam. We'll do future videos. I'll check out some of the other stages on it and see what times we can get. I'm ready to be punished. So download it right away. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click the subscribe button, likey, dislikey. Those that do subscribe will be 33.5% more efficient at drone racing, so there's a good reason to click it. Until the next one, guys, thanks for watching, and goodbye.